Namaste. Have you ever wondered what the wind looks like? Not the leaves dancing in the breeze, not the waves rising upon the ocean, not the clouds drifting across the morning sky, but the wind itself. Have you ever seen it? Perhaps not, because none of us has. We have only seen what the wind touches. A tiny lamp begins to flicker. A curtain gently sways. The fragrance of jasmine quietly finds its way to us. A child lets go of a kite, and suddenly it begins to dance across the sky. The wind never announces its arrival. It never asks to be noticed. It simply moves. And in moving everything else, it reveals that it was always there. Maybe some of the greatest realities in life are exactly like that. Can you see love? Can you see kindness? Can you see hope? Can you see music before a single note is sung? And yet, we never doubt that they exist. Because not everything that is real must first become visible. There is another invisible companion that has traveled with us every single moment of our lives. Long before we learned to speak, long before we knew our own name, long before we opened our eyes to this world. It had already begun its silent work. It has never asked us for gratitude. It has never demanded our attention. It simply continues, moment after moment, day after day, year after year, quietly, faithfully, unceasingly, and strangely, we hardly ever notice it. Perhaps the things that serve us the most are often the ones we take most for granted. For thousands of years, humanity has looked up at the sky, stood beside flowing rivers, watched fire dance, felt the earth beneath its feet, and experienced the gentle touch of the wind. Some saw nature, some saw science, some saw beauty. The sages of a land saw something more. They saw the divine, expressing itself through every element of creation. And among these 5 great elements, there was one that could never be held, never be contained, never ever be seen, only experienced. That element was Vāyu, the wind, the ever-moving, the life-sustaining, the unseen. There is a sacred temple in Bharatavarsha where Lord Shiva is worshipped as Vāyu itself, a place where stone reminds us of something that cannot be seen, a place where silence speaks, a place where generations of seekers have stood asking questions that still echo through time. And it is to this extraordinary kshetra that our journey takes us today. I warmly welcome every one of you to another enriching episode of Ragadri, the Carnatic Music Gateway, a podcast dedicated to appreciating and exploring the beauty of Carnatic music in every possible way. Here at Ragadri, every composition is much more than a melody. It is history, it is devotion, it is poetry, it is philosophy, it is culture, it is scripture, and above all, it is an invitation to discover ourselves. This year marks the celebration of the 250th birth anniversary of Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar, one of the greatest composer saints our musical tradition has ever known. To offer a humble tribute, today we journey through one of his profound compositions on Lord Shiva, Śrī Kālahastīśa. Over the next hour, we shall travel together through an ancient temple, through timeless music, through the wisdom of the Upanishads, through fascinating insights from biology and the natural sciences, through the majestic Raga Hussaini, and through the immortal poetry of Dikshitar himself. But more than all of these, we shall quietly follow one question, a question so simple that we seldom pause to ask it. What is it that truly keeps us alive? Come, let us begin our journey. We began our journey today with something we cannot see, the wind. Invisible, yet unmistakably present. Perhaps that is why our rishis never looked upon nature as something separate from the divine. They saw every element, every force, every rhythm of creation as an expression of Ishvara. Among those sacred manifestations, there is one extraordinary shrine where Lord Shiva is worshipped as Vāyu, the unseen, ever-moving principle. And standing before the sacred Vāyu Liṅga, more than 2 centuries ago, was one of the greatest composer saints of Carnatic music, Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar. What he experienced there did not remain a personal experience. It blossomed into music. The composition we are exploring today begins with the words Śrī Kālahastīśa Shrita Janavana Samīrākāra Mam Pahi Raja Maule Ehi. At first glance, it appears to be a beautiful prayer addressed to Lord Shiva. But Dikshitar rarely composed just a prayer. Every word in this composition is deliberate. Every phrase carries multiple layers of meaning: a temple, a deity, a philosophical truth, a scriptural reference, a musical idea, all beautifully woven together into a single composition. That is why Dikshitar's kritis continue to fascinate not only musicians, but also Sanskrit scholars, students of Vedānta, historians, and devotees alike. What makes this composition particularly remarkable is that Dikshitar himself quietly gives us the roadmap for today's journey. In the very first line, he addresses Lord Shiva as Samīrākāra, the one whose very form is Vāyu. In the very next section, he introduces a profound Vedantic expression, Prāṇamaya Kosha. He then speaks of the 5 great elements: air, space, earth, water, and fire. Later, he invokes Jnana Prasunambika, calls Kālahasti the Dakshina Kailasha, addresses Lord Shiva as Pashupati, reveals the Advaitic truth through Satchit Anandamaya Murte, and finally remembers the immortal devotion of Kannappa Nayanar. Just pause for a moment and reflect. Within a single composition, Dikshitar brings together Veda, Vedānta, Agama, temple tradition, history, philosophy, bhakti, music, and poetry. This is not merely the work of a composer, it is the vision of a seer. It is therefore no coincidence that musicians and rasikas across the world are celebrating the 250th birth anniversary of Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar. For 2.5 centuries, his compositions have continued to guide generations of seekers. They are sung on concert platforms, they are offered in temples, they are studied in classrooms, they are contemplated by scholars, and above all, they continue to inspire countless hearts. As we pay our humble tribute through this episode, let us first spend a few moments understanding the remarkable life of the saint who transformed sacred experience into immortal music. Who was Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar? How did his life shape his music? And why do his compositions continue to feel timeless even today? Let us now journey into the life of the visionary who gave us this extraordinary masterpiece. Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar was born in Tiruvarur, one of the holiest centers of music and Shaiva worship in South India, into a family deeply rooted in Vedic learning and music. His father, Sri Ramaswamy Dikshitar, was himself an accomplished scholar, composer, and musician. From a very young age, Muthuswami Dikshitar was immersed in Sanskrit, the Vedas, temple traditions, and classical music. This early foundation shaped not only his intellect but also his vision. For Dikshitar, music was never entertainment alone. It was a sacred means of understanding the divine. Every great journey has a turning point. For Dikshitar, it came in the form of his revered guru, Sri Chidambaranatha Yogi. Recognizing the young musician's extraordinary potential, the Guru took him to Kashi, the eternal city of Lord Vishwanatha. Imagine this transformation. A young seeker from the fertile musical traditions of South now finds himself on the banks of the sacred Ganga. There, amidst Vedic chanting, temple rituals, philosophical discussions, and spiritual discipline, Dikshitar's horizons expanded immeasurably. Kashi was not merely a place of pilgrimage. It became his university. He immersed himself in Sanskrit literature, Mantra Shastra, Vedānta, Sri Vidya Upasana, and the rich spiritual traditions that flowed through that ancient city. Many scholars believe that this period profoundly influenced the unique character of his compositions. When we listen to Dikshitar Kriti today, we hear not merely music, we hear the voice of a mind shaped by deep scriptural study and disciplined contemplation. One of the most cherished episodes in Dikshitar's life is associated with the sacred waters of the Ganga. Tradition narrates that his guru instructed him to enter the river in prayer. As Dikshitar emerged, he is said to have received a veena through divine grace, a symbol of Saraswati's blessing, and of music becoming an instrument of spiritual expression. Whether one approaches this episode as history, sacred tradition, or spiritual symbolism, its message is profound. True music is not born merely from technical brilliance. It blossoms when knowledge, devotion, and grace come together. From that point onward, Dikshitar's life became inseparable from his music. After returning from Kashi, Dikshitar did not remain in one place. He travelled extensively across Bharatavarsha, visiting sacred temples, observing their traditions, studying their iconography, and absorbing the spiritual atmosphere of each kshetra. These were not journeys undertaken as a tourist. They were pilgrimages. At every temple, he observed carefully, the form of the deity, the legends associated with the shrine, the architectural uniqueness, the agamic traditions, the Sthala Purana, the presiding Devi, the surrounding landscape, and then he transformed all of it into music. His compositions are therefore often described as musical Sthala Puranas. They preserve details that continue to guide musicians, devotees, and scholars even today. There is a reason why many musicians affectionately describe Dikshitar as the composer who sang the Vedas. His compositions are filled with echoes of the Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, Tantra, and Advaita Vedānta. He did not quote scripture merely to display scholarship. Every reference serves the devotional and philosophical purpose of the composition. Here, when he addresses Lord Shiva as Satchit Anandamaya Murte, he is invoking the language of Advaita. When he refers to the Pranamaya Kosha, he is drawing directly from the contemplative framework of the Taittiriya Upanishad. When he celebrates a sacred kshetra, he also preserves its theology. When he praises a deity, he simultaneously reveals its deeper symbolic meaning. His compositions teach without becoming lectures. They illuminate without becoming complicated. That is their enduring beauty. Dikshitar's legacy extends far beyond individual compositions. His celebrated Navagraha Kritis transformed planetary worship into profound musical offerings. His Kamalamba Navavarana Kritis remain unparalleled in their integration of Sri Vidya Mantra, Tantra, and music. His compositions on temples across India preserve invaluable insights into our cultural and spiritual heritage. And in almost every composition, he gracefully signs his work with the Guru Guha Mudra, a tribute to Lord Subramanya, whom he regarded as his divine Guru. Even after 2.5 centuries, his music continues to inspire not because it seeks novelty, but because it is rooted in timeless truth. Among the hundreds of compositions that flowed from this extraordinary composer is one that beautifully unites music, temple tradition, Vedanta, and the Vedic vision of nature. A composition of Lord Shiva of Śrī Kālahasti. Notice how it begins. Śrī Kālahastīśa Shrita Janavana Samira Kara. Even before we enter the temple, Dikshitar introduces us to the very heart of the kshetra, Samira Kara, the one whose form is the wind itself. Why did he choose this expression? Why is Kālahasti revered as the Vāyu Liṅga? And what does the unseen element of air have to teach us about life, devotion, and the self? To understand that, we must first understand the sacred kshetra itself. Let us now journey to Śrī Kālahasti, the Dakshina Kailasha. As we have just seen, Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar was not merely a composer who travelled from one temple to another in search of inspiration. He was a pilgrim. Every kshetra he visited became a living classroom. He observed the deity, the temple traditions, the iconography, the agamic practices, the Sthala Purana, the surrounding landscape, and above all, the spiritual truth that each sacred shrine quietly revealed. He then transformed all of these into timeless compositions. It is therefore no surprise that to truly appreciate a Dikshitar Kriti, we must also understand the temple that inspired it. and today's composition is no exception. Before we stand before Lord Śrī Kālahastīśa, before we discover why this sacred shrine is revered as the Vāyu Liṅga, let us first pause and ask a timeless question. What exactly is a kshetra? For many of us, a temple is a place where we go to pray. We fold our hands, offer flowers, light a lamp, seek the Lord's blessings, and then we return home. But our ancestors saw a temple very differently. In the language of our scriptures, a temple is a kshetra. The word kshetra literally means a field. A field is not merely a piece of land. It is a place where something is cultivated. A tiny seed is nurtured with patience until it becomes a flourishing tree. Likewise, a sacred kshetra is a place where the human mind is cultivated, where devotion matures into contemplation, where contemplation blossoms into wisdom. A temple is therefore not simply a destination, it is a place of inner transformation. Have you ever wondered, how did our ancestors know where to build a temple? Why does every ancient temple possess such remarkable harmony? Was it simply the imagination of great architects? The answer lies in the Agama Shastras. Alongside the Vedas, our tradition preserves the Agamas, a vast body of sacred texts that guide the construction, consecration, and worship of temples. For Shiva temples, such as Śrī Kālahasti, the Shaiva Agamas serve as a guiding authority. They describe how the site is chosen, how the sanctum is designed, how the deity is installed, how worship is to be performed every single day. The temple, therefore, is not merely built. It is established according to a sacred discipline that has been preserved for centuries. Every temple becomes an expression of scripture in stone. The construction of a temple does not begin with chisels and hammers. It begins with reverence. The Agamas speak of Bhumi Pariksha, the careful examination of the land, the nature of the soil, the surroundings, the availability of water, the orientation of the site. All these are thoroughly considered before construction begins. The land is then purified through sacred rites. The temple itself is laid out according to scriptural principles, creating a harmonious space for worship. Nothing is accidental. Every doorway, every corridor, every shrine have existence for a purpose. Not merely to impress the eye, but to gently prepare the mind for the presence of the divine. As we walk through a traditional temple, we are greeted by towering gopurams, graceful mandapas, and magnificent sculptures. Each one tells a story. Yet, the most important space in the entire temple is surprisingly the smallest, the Garbhagriha, literally the womb chamber. It is usually quiet, simple, dimly lit. Nothing competes for our attention. Why? Because the temple is slowly inviting us inward. The journey from the entrance to the sanctum is not merely a physical walk. It is a symbolic journey from the noise of the world to the stillness of the heart. The farther we walk into the temple, the deeper we are invited to journey within ourselves. One may ask, when does a beautifully sculpted image become a deity? The Agamas answer this through the sacred rite known as Prāṇa Pratishta. After the temple is completed, the deity is ceremonially consecrated through Vedic mantras and agamic rituals. From that moment, worship is established. The temple begins its living rhythm. Every day, the Lord is awakened, Abhisheka is performed, the deity is adorned, Naivedya is offered, lamps are waved, mantras are chanted, the temple breathes through Nitya Puja, generation after generation. This is why our tradition does not regard a temple merely as an ancient monument. It is a living center of worship, a place where devotion has continued uninterrupted across centuries. At this point, a thoughtful question naturally arises. The Upanishads declare that Brahman is all pervading. If the divine is present everywhere, why should we visit a temple? The answer is subtle. The temple is not built because God needs a home. The temple is built because the human mind needs a place where it can become quiet. Outside, our attention is scattered. Inside the temple, the sound of the bell, the fragrance of incense, the glow of the deepam, the chanting of mantras, the rhythm of worship, all gently draw the mind inward. In Vedānta, this preparation of the mind is called Chitta Shuddhi, the purification and refinement of the mind. A refined mind becomes capable of deeper inquiry. Thus, temple worship is not separate from Vedānta. It prepares us for Vedānta. One begins with devotion, the other culminates in knowledge. Together, they complete the spiritual journey. Among the countless sacred kshetras of India, some are revered for revealing the divine through the 5 great elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. These are the celebrated Panchabhuta Sthalas. Each invites us to contemplate not merely an element of nature, but the divine that pervades it. Our destination today is one such extraordinary kshetra, a temple where Shiva is worshipped not as something visible, but as Vayu, the wind that cannot be seen, yet is known through its presence. A temple where an invisible element becomes a doorway to profound spiritual inquiry. This is Śrī Kālahasti, revered through the ages as Dakshina Kailasha. But how did this sacred shrine come to be known as Vāyu Liṅga? What legends sanctified this kshetra? And what deeper truths did Muthuswami Dikshitar discover here that inspired him to compose Śrī Kālahastīśa Shrita Janavana Samīrākāra? Let us now begin our journey into the timeless world of Śrī Kālahasti. There are temples that inspire devotion. There are temples that inspire wonder. And then there are temples that quietly invite us into contemplation. Śrī Kālahasti belongs to the latter. Situated on the banks of the sacred river Suvarnamukhi, in present-day Andhra Pradesh, this ancient Shaiva Kshetra has been a beacon of worship for well over 1,000 years. Dynasties such as the Pallavas, the Cholas, and later the Vijayanagara rulers enriched the temple through successive renovations and patronage, leaving behind a magnificent legacy of architecture and devotion. Yet, what draws pilgrims here is not merely its grandeur. It is the profound spiritual vision that the temple represents. For centuries, Devotees have lovingly referred to this sacred kshetra as Dakshina Kailasha, the Kailasha of the south. Why such a lofty title? Because this is believed to be a place where Lord Shiva is experienced with the same sanctity and grace that the scriptures associate with Mount Kailasha, his eternal abode. It is not merely a temple to visit, it is a place to inwardly encounter Shiva. The temple nestles at the foot of a rocky hill known as Kailashagiri. According to the Sthala Purana, this hill itself is regarded as sacred to Lord Shiva, and over centuries, saints, devotees, and seekers have considered this region an ideal place for tapas and worship. The atmosphere of Śrī Kālahasti is unlike many bustling temple towns. There is a certain stillness here. Even amidst the movement of pilgrims, one senses a quiet invitation to reflect. Perhaps this is why saints, composers, and philosophers found themselves drawn to this kshetra again and again. Among them was Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar, who immortalized this temple through his majestic composition Śrī Kālahastīśa in the raga Husaini. Śrī Kālahasti occupies a unique place in the sacred geography of India. It is one of the celebrated Panchabhuta Sthalas, the 5 great temples where Lord Shiva is worshipped through the 5 fundamental elements of creation. At Kanchipuram, he is worshipped as Prithvi, the earth; at Thiruvainaikaval, as Apaha, the water; at Thiruvannamalai, as Agni, the fire; at Chidambaram, as Akasha, the limitless space; and here at Śrī Kālahasti, he is worshipped as Vāyu, the air, the wind, the unseen principle that sustains life itself. How remarkable that our sages chose not merely to worship the elements of nature, but to recognize the divine that shines through them. This is not nature worship. It is the recognition that all of creation is pervaded by the same supreme reality. The very name of the temple carries a beloved tradition. According to the Sthala Purana, 3 devotees worshipped Lord Shiva here with unwavering devotion: a Shri, the spider; a Kala, the serpent; and a mighty Hasti, the elephant. Each worshipped in its own way. The spider carefully wove a web over the linga to shield it from dust, leaves, and the heat of the sun. The serpent offered precious gems as its act of reverence. The elephant, with heartfelt devotion, fetched water every day from the river and performed abhisheka before adorning the linga with fresh flowers. Each believed that its own form of worship was the highest. Unaware of one another's intentions, their offerings repeatedly undid what the others had lovingly offered. The elephant washed away the serpent's jewels and the spider's web. The serpent displaced the flowers. The spider rebuilt its shelter. Eventually, conflict arose. Yet Lord Shiva, who sees only the sincerity of devotion and not its outward form, bestowed his grace upon all 3. The temple came to be known as Śrī Kālahasti, preserving the memory of these humble devotees for all generations. The story gently reminds us that the Lord measures devotion not by the grandeur of the offering, but by the purity of the heart behind it. As the centuries passed, this sacred kshetra once again became the stage for another extraordinary expression of devotion, one that transcended ritual, convention, and even reason. It was a story of a humble hunter whose love for Shiva was so complete that it has continued to inspire seekers ever since. His name was Tinnan, remembered today as Kannappa Nayanar. Born into a family of hunters, he had never studied the Vedas or the Agamas, nor had he learned the formal traditions of temple worship. Yet, what he possessed was something far rarer, a heart that knew only love. Each day, he brought the finest offerings he knew. Water carried in his mouth, for he had no vessel. Freshly hunted meat, because it was the best food he could offer. Flowers gathered from the forest and tucked into his hair, as both his hands were occupied. To those bound by ritual, these offerings seemed improper. But to Shiva, they were the purest expressions of an innocent and unwavering heart. One day, Tinnan noticed blood flowing from one of the Lord's eyes. Without a moment's hesitation, he plucked out his own eye and placed it upon the linga. When the second eye too began to bleed, he resolved to offer his remaining eye as well. Knowing that he would lose his sight, he placed his foot firmly upon the linga to mark the spot. Just as he was about to complete the sacrifice, Lord Shiva manifested before him, stopped him, and embraced him as his own. From that moment, Tinnan came to be revered as Kannappa Nayanar, one of the 63 Nayanmars of the Shaiva tradition. The life of Kannappa reveals a profound truth. Rituals have their sacred place, and the scriptures illuminate the path. Yet, when devotion becomes absolute, the Lord looks not at the form of the offering, but at the purity of the heart from which it arises. Among the many traditions associated with Śrī Kālahasti, one has fascinated pilgrims for centuries. Within the sanctum, a lamp is traditionally observed with its flame gently flickering, even though the Garbhagriha remains enclosed. For generations, devotees have cherished this as a sacred reminder of the presence of Vāyu, the deity of this kshetra. Whether one approaches it with the eye of faith or with the curiosity of observation, the symbolism is unmistakable. Air is never seen directly. It is known only through movement. A swaying leaf, a drifting cloud, a flickering flame. The invisible reveals itself through its effects. This simple observation beautifully prepares us for the deeper enquiry that our sages unfold. When we hear the word Vāyu, we often think merely of the wind that blows around us. But the sages saw something much deeper. The air outside sustains the body. The Prāṇa within sustains life. Could there be a relationship between the two? Was this why Lord Shiva chose to reveal himself here as the Vāyu Liṅga? And why does Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar begin his composition by addressing the Lord as Samirakara, the one whose very form is like the life-giving breeze? To answer these questions, we must now move from the outer temple to the temple within, from Vāyu to Prāṇa, from the movement of air to the movement of life itself. Until now, our journey has taken us through the outer temple. We stood before the majestic shrine of Śrī Kālahasti. We explored its sacred legends. We also understood why Lord Shiva is worshipped here as the Vāyu Liṅga. But the sages never intended us to stop with the temple alone. Every temple ultimately points towards another temple, the one that each of us carries within. If the wind moves outside us, What is it that sustains life within us? That question marks the beginning of one of the most profound inquiries in the Upanishads. Think for a moment about the first event in every human life. A child is born. Before it speaks, before it opens its eyes, before anyone whispers its name, it takes its first breath. That first breath is greeted with joy. Doctors smile. Parents rejoice. A new life has begun. And when life's journey comes to an end, the final breath quietly departs. No wealth, no titles, no achievements accompany that final moment. Only the breath that silently sustained an entire lifetime comes to rest. Between the first breath and the last, everything we call life unfolds. Perhaps that is why our sages looked upon breath not merely as a biological necessity, but as a sacred mystery worthy of contemplation. At first glance, we may assume that prana simply means the air we inhale and exhale. But the Upanishads invite us to look more carefully. The air around us is Vāyu. It belongs to the external world. Prana is something subtler. It is the vital principle because of which this living body breathes, grows, functions, and responds. Consider this. The same air surrounds a living person and a body that has just passed away. The air has not changed. What has changed is the presence of prana. The sages therefore distinguished between the physical element called Vāyu and the vital principle called prana. The two are intimately related, but they are not identical. This profound inquiry finds beautiful expression in the Prashnopanishad. 6 earnest seekers approach the sage Pippalada, each carrying a question about life and reality. One of them, Kaushalya Ashvalayana, asks a question that continues to inspire spiritual inquiry even today. Bhagavan, from where does this prana arise? How does it enter the body? How does it sustain life? Notice how extraordinary the question is. He does not ask what is breathing. He asks what is the source of the very principle that makes life possible? The sage's answer is profound in its simplicity. Atmana esha prano jayate. This prana is born from the Atman. In just 4 words, the Upanishad transforms our understanding. Prana is not independent. It is not the ultimate reality. Its source is the Atman, the Self. The Upanishad then offers a simple yet profound comparison. Just as a person's shadow follows wherever the person goes, prana follows the presence of the Atma. The shadow has no independent existence. It depends entirely upon the one who sheds it. Likewise, prana functions because of the presence of the Self. This analogy gently reminds us that while prana is indispensable for life, it is still not the highest truth. The Self alone is independent. Everything else derives its existence from it. The Prashnopanishad narrates another beautiful episode. Once, the faculties of the body, the senses, speech, and mind began to wonder which among them was the greatest. Each believed itself indispensable. To resolve the dispute, prana prepared to leave the body. The moment it began to withdraw, the others found themselves unable to function. Realizing their dependence upon prana, they acknowledged its greatness. The Upanishad illustrates this with the image of a queen bee. When the queen bee leaves the hive, the other bees follow. When she returns, they too return. In the same way, the various faculties of the body depend upon prana for their functioning. The message is not one of superiority, it is one of interdependence. Life is a harmonious orchestration, and nothing functions in isolation. There is something deeply humbling about breath. It asks for nothing. It works without rest. Whether we are awake, asleep, happy, or sorrowful, it continues faithfully. We rarely notice it until perhaps a moment when breathing becomes difficult. The sages therefore saw every breath as a silent teacher. Every inhalation is received, every exhalation is offered. Without asking anything in return, Prāṇa serves as every moment of our lives. Perhaps gratitude begins when we become aware of what has always been quietly supporting us. Now, the symbolism of Śrī Kālahasti begins to reveal its deeper meaning. Lord Shiva is worshipped here as Vāyu, the external element of air. But the temple does not ask us to stop there. It gently invites us inward. If the outer Vāyu sustains the world, what is the inner principle that sustains us? The answer is Prāṇa. And if Prāṇa itself arises from the Atman, then every breath becomes a reminder of something far greater than the body. Our pilgrimage has quietly changed. We are no longer merely standing before a temple. We have begun to enter the temple within. The sages, however, did not stop with explaining Prāṇa. They went one step further. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, they describe the human being as being understood through 5 sheaths or panchakoshas. Among them is a Pranamaya Kosha, the sheath enlivened by Prāṇa. What exactly is this Pranamaya Kosha? How does it relate to our body, our mind, and ultimately to the Atma? That is the beautiful journey that awaits us next. In the previous part, the Prashna Upanishad taught us a profound truth. Prāṇa is not merely the breath we inhale, nor is it independent. It arises from the Atma. But the sages were not content with answering only the question, where does Prāṇa come from? They now ask another, how does Prāṇa function in our experience as a human being? To answer this, we turn to another luminous Upanishad, the Taittiriya Upanishad. The Taittiriya Upanishad presents one of the most elegant models for understanding the human personality. It tells us that what we ordinarily call I is understood through 5 concentric layers known as the Panchakoshas, the 5 sheaths. The first is the Annamaya Kosha, the sheath made of food, our physical body. It grows through food, it is sustained by food. And one day, it returns to the very earth from which food arises. But are we merely this physical body? The Upanishad gently says no, there is something subtler. The Upanishad declares, Tasmad dvā etasmadanara samayat anyontara atma pranamayaha. Notice the beauty of the expression. Within this Annamaya exists another inner self, the Pranamaya. The Upanishad does not discard the physical body. It says there is something within it, something subtler. The Pranamaya Kosha is the sheath enlivened by Prāṇa. If the physical body is like an instrument, Prāṇa is what enables that instrument to function. Without Prāṇa, the body remains. But life does not. The Taittiriya Upanishad then presents a beautiful meditation. It visualizes the Pranamaya Kosha as a bird. It says, Tasya prane vashiraha vyano dakshinav pakshaha apana uttarav pakshaha akasha atma prithvi pucham pratishta. Prāṇa is its head, Vyana is its right wing, Apana is its left wing, Akasha is its body, Earth is its supporting tail. This is not anatomy, it is meditation. The Upanishad is inviting us to contemplate the harmony of life. Every function has its place, every movement has its role. Life is sustained by perfect order. Our tradition further explains that this one Prāṇa performs different functions. As Prāṇa, it governs inhalation and the region of the chest. As Apana, it governs elimination. As Vyana, it circulates throughout the body. As Samana, it supports digestion and assimilation. As Udana, it governs upward movement, speech, and according to the scriptures, accompanies the jiva at the time of death. These are not 5 different pranas. They are 5 functional expressions of the one vital principle. Just as one sun illumines the entire world, one prana performs many functions within the body. Yet, the Upanishad makes an important observation. As indispensable as a Pranamaya Kosha is, it is still a kosha, a sheath. Something observed, something changing. Therefore, it cannot be the true self. The sages gently encourage us not to stop our inquiry here. If I can observe my breathing, if I can become aware of the movement of prana, then I, the observer, must be different from prana itself. This simple insight becomes the doorway to Vedānta. Suddenly, the symbolism of Śrī Kālahasti becomes even more profound. We began with the wind, the Vāyu Liṅga, the movement of air, the temple slowly guided us to Prāṇa. The Upanishads now guide us beyond Prāṇa itself. The outer pilgrimage has become an inner pilgrimage. The unseen wind outside led us to the unseen Prāṇa within. And Prāṇa itself quietly points towards the ever-present Atma. That is the genius of our sages. They begin with something everyone experiences and gently lead us towards the highest truth. Today, modern biology explains how breathing supplies oxygen to every cell of the body. The Upanishads were asking a different question. Not merely how does breathing happen, but why is a living body different from a lifeless one? The two inquiries are not rivals. They explore different dimensions of the same human experience. In the next part, let us see how modern science and the wisdom of the Upanishads together deepen our appreciation of something as simple and as extraordinary as a single breath. In the previous part, the Taittiriya Upanishad introduced us to the Pranamaya Kosha, the sheath enlivened by Prāṇa. The sages taught that prana sustains a living body, yet prana itself is not the ultimate self. It is one of the layers through which life expresses itself. The Upanishads were asking a profound question. What is the principle that enlivens life? Modern science asks a different question. How does breathing sustain life? Neither question diminishes the other. One explores meaning, the other explains the mechanism. Together, they invite us to look with renewed wonder at something we experience every moment of our lives: our breath. Take a slow, gentle breath. Notice how effortlessly it happens. You did not consciously decide to inhale, nor do you have to remind yourself to exhale. From the moment we entered this world until our final day, breathing continues almost unceasingly. An average adult breathes between 12 and 20 times every minute. That amounts to nearly 20,000 breaths every single day. Most of them pass unnoticed. Yet, each one quietly sustains life. Perhaps the greatest miracles are not always the loudest. Sometimes they are the ones that happen so faithfully that we cease to notice them. Let us follow the path of just one breath. As air enters through the nose, it is filtered, warmed, and humidified before traveling through the trachea into the lungs. Within the lungs are millions of microscopic air sacs called alveoli. Though individually tiny, together they create an astonishing surface area approximately the size of a tennis court. It is here that one of nature's most elegant exchanges takes place. Oxygen from the air passes into the bloodstream. At the same time, carbon dioxide, produced by every living cell, moves from the blood into the lungs to be exhaled. Every inhalation receives, and every exhalation releases. Life is sustained through this continuous exchange. The story does not end here. The oxygen absorbed into the bloodstream is carried by hemoglobin within our red blood cells. Within moments, it reaches every organ of the body: the brain, the heart, the muscles, the liver, the kidneys, and every living tissue. Inside each cell, oxygen participates in countless biochemical reactions that release energy from the food we consume. Every heartbeat, every thought, every movement, every spoken word, every note sung by a musician depends upon this uninterrupted process. Breathing is therefore not merely about filling the lungs. It is about sustaining the life of every cell within us. One of the remarkable features of breathing is that it continues even when we are completely unaware of it. While we sleep, breathing continues. When we climb a hill, it becomes faster. When we rest, it slows. When a vocalist sings an elaborate alapana or sustains a long korvai, the breathing pattern adjusts naturally to support the music. Deep within the brainstem are respiratory centers that constantly monitor the body's needs. Without asking our permission, they adjust the rhythm of breathing every moment. Life quietly takes care of itself. Breathing possesses another unique quality. Unlike the beating of the heart or the flow of blood, breathing can also become conscious. We can observe it, slow it, deepen it. This simple awareness has been cherished for centuries in the traditions of yoga. Not because breath itself is a destination, but because it becomes a doorway. When the breath becomes gentle, the mind often follows. Attention becomes steady. Distraction begins to settle. The breath quietly becomes a bridge between the body and the mind. Long before physiology described the mechanics of respiration, the Vedic seers looked upon the natural world with profound reverence. In the Sri Rudram, Rudra is not confined to a distant heaven. He is recognized as present throughout creation, in rivers, mountains, forests, herbs, animals, people, and the very forces of nature. Among its beautiful invocations in this mantra, Namo Vatyaya cha Reshmiyaya cha, salutations to him who is present in the mighty wind and in the gentle breeze. Notice what the mantra does. It is not attempting to explain atmospheric science, nor is it describing physiology. It teaches something equally important: reverence. The very air that sweeps across mountains, that moves through forests, that gathers the rain-bearing clouds, is the same air that enters our lungs with every breath. The Vedic vision transforms an ordinary experience into an opportunity for gratitude. Science allows us to marvel at the astonishing precision of the human body. The Vedas invite us to marvel at the sacredness of the natural world. The Upanishads ask us to inquire into the source of life itself. These are not competing viewpoints. They illuminate different dimensions of the same reality. Science answers, how does breathing happen? The Upanishads ask, who is the experiencer of this breath? The Vedas remind us, never lose your sense of reverence for the world that sustains this breath. Together, they deepen our appreciation of every inhalation and every exhalation. Standing before the Vāyu Liṅga of Śrī Kālahasti, we now see more than a sacred symbol. We see the invisible element that makes life possible. The wind outside sustains the world. The breath within sustains the body. And through both, the sages gently invite us to recognize the extraordinary within that appears ordinary. Every breath becomes a quiet reminder that life is not something we manufacture. It is something we receive moment after moment. Yet, our journey is not complete. So far, we have reflected on the breath within the human body. But the sages observed something even more profound. Rhythm is not limited to human life. The oceans rise and fall. The winds circulate across the earth. The forests exchange gases with the atmosphere. The seasons arrive and depart with remarkable regularity. The stars themselves are born, shine, transform, and dissolve across vast stretches of time. Everywhere in creation there is rhythm, movement, expansion, and withdrawal. It is almost as though the universe itself breathes. Could the rhythm within us be a reflection of a greater rhythm that pervades all existence? That is the beautiful inquiry that awaits us next. In the next part of our journey, let us explore the universe breathes too. Until now, our journey has been centered on ourselves. We reflected upon the breath that quietly sustains every moment of our lives. The Upanishads led us from breath to Prāṇa, from Prāṇa to the Pranamaya Kosha, and science revealed the astonishing precision with which every living cell is nourished. But the sages did not stop with the individual. They gently lifted the seeker's vision from the body to the cosmos. They began to ask another question: Is the harmony we experience within ourselves merely personal, or is it part of a far greater order that pervades the entire universe? Pause for a moment and observe nature. Morning gives way to evening. The moon grows full and gradually disappears. The seasons arrive with remarkable regularity. Seeds become forests. Clouds become rain. Rivers meet the ocean. Nothing remains static. Everything participates in movement. Not chaotic movement, but ordered movement, a rhythm. The ancient seers recognized this universal order long before it could be described through mathematics or astronomy. To them, creation was not random. It was purposeful, interconnected, and profoundly harmonious. One of the remarkable features of the Sri Rudram is that it never limits Rudra to a single shrine or form. Instead, the hymn trains a seeker to recognize the divine throughout creation. It salutes Rudra in mountains, in rivers, in forests, in fields, in villages, among travelers, among artisans, among hunters, and in every direction. The opening of the Namakam itself begins by bowing to all-pervading Lord, and later it declares, Namo Hiranya Bahave Senanye Disham Chapataye Namaha. Salutations to the golden-armed one, the commander of all, the Lord of every direction. Notice the shift in vision. The seeker is no longer standing before only one sanctum. Every direction becomes sacred. Every landscape becomes worthy of reverence. The universe itself becomes a temple. The Sri Rudram continues this extraordinary vision by saluting Rudra wherever life unfolds. It says, Namo Vrikshebhyo Harikeshebhyaha. Salutations to the trees with their verdant foliage. What a remarkable perspective! The hymn does not merely admire the tree, it bows before it, not because the tree itself is God, but because the divine is recognized through it. This vision transforms our relationship with nature. The mountain is no longer merely a mountain. The river is no longer merely water. The forest is no longer merely vegetation. Creation becomes sacred because it is pervaded by the same reality. The Purusha Suktam carries this vision even further. It proclaims, Purusha evedakam sarvam yat bhutam yatcha bhavyam. The Purusha alone is all this, whatever has been and whatever is yet to be. This is one of the grandest declarations in Vedic literature. Nothing exists outside the cosmic presence. The galaxies, the stars, the mountains, the oceans, the forests, and every living being are all embraced within that one immeasurable reality. When viewed in this light, we are no longer separate observers standing outside the universe. We are participants within it. Modern science, too, continually reveals how deeply interconnected creation is. The stability of our climate depends upon the oceans. The fertility of the soil depends upon countless unseen organisms. The food we eat depends upon sunlight, rainfall, and pollinating insects. The life of one species is linked with the life of another in ways we are still discovering. The Vedic sages observed this interconnectedness through contemplation. Science observes it through investigation. Both invite the same response: humility. The more we understand creation, the more we realize how deeply our own lives depend upon a harmony far greater than ourselves. As her journey began, we stood before the Vāyu Liṅga of Śrī Kālahasti. We first saw it as one of the Pancha Bhuta Stalas. Then the Upanishads led us inward to Prāṇa. Science revealed the astonishing intelligence that sustains every breath. And now the Vedas have widened our vision still further, inviting us to see the same harmony reflected throughout creation. Perhaps this is the deeper message of Śrī Kālahasti. The invisible is not insignificant. The unseen is often what sustains the seen. Whether it is the wind that moves across the earth, the rhythm that governs the seasons, or the breath that quietly sustains our own lives, the invisible continually reveals its presence through its effects. The sages recognized this universal harmony and bowed before it with reverence. Yet, our journey is still incomplete. The wind outside sustains the world. The breath within sustains life. But when that very breath passes through the human voice or through the strings of a veena, something extraordinary happens. It becomes Nāda. The same Vayu that quietly sustains life now becomes music. Perhaps that is why our musical tradition has always regarded sound as something sacred. Before we understand why Muthuswami Dikshitar chose the Raga Hussaini, we must first understand how breath becomes sound and how sound becomes music. Let us now enter one of the most beautiful ideas in Indian music, Nāda, Vayu, and the birth of music. Have you ever wondered why music has the power to move us? Why does a single note sometimes bring tears to our eyes, while another fills us with joy or leaves us in profound silence? After all, what is music? Is it merely a pleasant arrangement of frequencies? Or is there something deeper that the sages perceived? Perhaps the answer begins with something so ordinary that we rarely notice it: our own breath. Take a gentle breath in. Now let it flow out. There is silence, but allow that same breath to pass through the vocal cords. Suddenly, the sound is born. No instrument has yet been played. No raga has yet emerged. No composition has yet been sung. Yet, something extraordinary has happened. The invisible breath has become audible. Without Vayu, there is no voice. Without breath, there is no song. The same breath that quietly sustains life now begins to express life. Our ancient tradition recognized this transformation long before acoustics became a science. The breath that enters and leaves the body is called shvasa. When that breath is consciously shaped, guided by the vocal apparatus, refined through discipline, and infused with awareness, it becomes Nāda. Nāda is therefore not merely sound. It is sound made meaningful. It is vibration shaped into expression. This is why Indian music has never regarded sound as a mere physical phenomenon. It is regarded as a sacred medium through which emotion, devotion, and knowledge are communicated. The Natya Shastra of Bharata Muni traces the origin of music to the human voice. From the voice arises the notes. From the notes emerge melody. From melody unfolds raga, and the music begins not with an instrument but with a human being. Every instrument we cherish, the veena, the flute, the violin, the nadaswaram, ultimately seeks to emulate the expressive possibilities of the human voice. And the human voice itself begins with breath. Our musical tradition goes even further. Later, works such as the Sangita Ratnakara speak of Nāda not merely as audible sound but as the very foundation of music. Without Nāda, there can be no Swara. Without Swara, there can be no Raga. Without Raga, there can be no Kriti. Nāda is therefore not simply the beginning of music. It is the womb from which music is born. Perhaps this is why musicians spent years not merely learning compositions, but learning to produce a single beautiful note. For when the Nāda is pure, everything that follows naturally acquires beauty. Consider a vocalist. Before every phrase, there is a silent inhalation. The audience notices the music. Rarely does it notice the breath that made the music possible. A flautist does not produce melody with fingers alone. The veena may not require breath to vibrate its strings, yet it still seeks to imitate the living continuity of the human voice. Even percussion depends upon the performer's inner rhythm, steadiness, and controlled movement. Behind every performance lies an invisible discipline. The visible music is sustained by an unseen foundation, just as life itself is sustained by what we rarely notice. There is another mystery. Music is not created only by sound. It is also shaped by silence. The pause between two notes, the space before the next phrase, the stillness after a cadence are not empty. They give meaning to what is heard. In the same way, we often notice only the events of our lives. The sages invite us to notice the silence that supports them. Perhaps music teaches us to listen not only to sound but also to stillness. Suddenly, the symbolism of Śrī Kālahasti appears in an entirely new light. We began our journey with the Vāyu Liṅga. We discovered the unseen wind, contemplated on the Prāṇa, explored the Pranamaya Kosha. Science revealed the wonder of breathing. The Vedas expanded our vision to the harmony of creation. And now we discover one more transformation. The same Vāyu that sustains life becomes Nāda. The invisible becomes audible. The inaudible becomes music. Perhaps this is why Indian music has always been more than entertainment. It is remembrance. A reminder that every note we sing is born of the very breath that sustains our existence. If breath gives birth to Nāda, how does Nāda awaken emotion? Why does one raga evoke serenity while another stirs longing, compassion, or devotion? Among the countless ragas of Carnatic music, why did Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar choose Hussaini to sing the glory of Śrī Kālahastīśa? Was it merely a musical preference? Or was the raga itself carrying the emotional fragrance of the temple, the breeze, and the compassionate presence of Lord Shiva? As we enter the next part of our journey, we shall discover that in Carnatic music, a raga is not merely a scale. It is a way of making the heart listen, and few ragas accomplish that as profoundly as Hussaini. If Nāda is the language through which the heart communes with the divine, then every raga becomes a unique expression of that sacred dialogue. In Carnatic music, a great composition is never merely a union of lyrics and melody. Every raga is chosen with profound purpose, carrying within it an emotional world that breathes life into the composer's vision. Muthuswami Dikshitar chose Husaini with great purpose, allowing the raga to beautifully reflect the spirit of the composition. For Dikshitar, a raga was never just a melodic framework. It was the very soul of the composition, shaping its emotion, illuminating its meaning, and gently guiding the listener towards the spiritual essence of the Sahitya. Musically, Husaini is a Bhashanga Vakrajanya raga of the 22nd Melakarta Karahara Priya. Being a Bhashanga raga, it occasionally employs an Anyaswara, the Shuddha Daivata, a note outside the scale of its parent Melakarta. This subtle departure from the parent scale imparts a distinctive melodic color, enriching the raga with a unique emotional depth and making it instantly recognizable to the discerning listener. Yet, Husaini cannot be understood merely through its scale. It is what musicians describe as a Prayoga Pradhana raga, whose true identity unfolds through its characteristic phrases, graceful gamakas, and expressive melodic moments. Rather than being confined to a sequence of notes, Husaini reveals its beauty through experience. It is this phrase-oriented nature that gives the raga its unmistakable personality. Husaini is also revered as Rakti Raga. The word Rakti literally means that which delights or colors the mind. In Carnatic music, a Rakti Raga is one whose greatest strength lies not in technical complexity, but in its extraordinary ability to captivate the listener through melody and emotion. Husaini is predominantly associated with Karuna Rasa, the emotion of compassion and tender pathos. At the same time, it gently conveys devotion, humility, quiet yearning, and deep introspection. It gently turns the mind inward, making it an ideal musical canvas for prayer and contemplation. It is therefore no surprise that generations of composers have cherished Husaini for devotional compositions. Its timeless appeal lies not merely in its musical grammar, but in its remarkable ability to move the heart. Few ragas possess the quiet dignity and emotional refinement that Husaini offers so effortlessly. Perhaps this is precisely why Muthuswami Dikshitar chose Husaini for this masterpiece. The composition, Śrī Kālahastīśa, is not a majestic proclamation of the Lord's glory. It is a heartfelt prayer of surrender. From the very opening invocation, Dikshitar approaches the Lord of Śrī Kālahasti with reverence, humility, and unwavering devotion. The gentle pathos and compassion inherent in Husaini perfectly complement the Sahitya, allowing every phrase to resonate with tenderness and inner stillness. Rather than standing apart from the lyrics, the raga becomes their emotional voice. It is almost as though Husaini itself stands before the Vāyu Liṅga as another devotee offering its silent prayer. This seamless union of raga and Sahitya is one of Dikshitar's greatest strengths. For him, music was never separate from philosophy. Every raga was carefully chosen to reflect the spiritual essence of the composition. In Śrī Kālahastīśa, Husaini becomes more than a melodic framework. It becomes the very medium through which bhakti, Vedānta, and musical beauty converge. As we now prepare to enter this magnificent composition, let us listen with both the ears of a Risika and the heart of a seeker. Listen to the graceful movements of Hosseini, to the tenderness it evokes, and to the quiet compassion that flows through every phrase. Listen to how Dikshitar weaves profound Vedantic insight into sublime poetry without ever disturbing the serenity of the melody. For when a raga possesses the power to move the heart, when the Sahitya illumines the intellect, and when both together awaken devotion, a Kriti transcends the boundaries of music. It becomes an offering. It becomes contemplation. It becomes a pathway from sound to silence, from melody to meditation, and from the worship of the Lord outside to the discovery of the divine within.
Śrī Kālahastīśa Śrī Vanasāumira Śrī Kālahastīśa Śrī Vanasāumira Śrī Kālahastīśa Śrī Vanasamīrākaramam pahi Rājamulehi Śrī Kālahastīśa Śrī Vanasamīrākaramam pahi Rājamulehi Pakari Vedehari Prāṇamaya Kosha Pakari Vedehari Prāṇamaya Kosha Pakari Vedehari Prāṇamaya Kosha Nīlākāśa Bhūmi Salilāni Prakāsa Shiva Śrī Pakari Vedehari Prāṇamaya Kosha Nīlākāśa Bhūmi Salilāni Prakāsa Shiva Śrī Kālahastīśa Śrī Vanasamīrākaramam pahi Rājamulehi Jnana Prasunambika Pate Jnana Prasunambika Pate Bhaktabhimana Dakshina Kailasavasa Jnana Prasunambika Pate Bhaktabhimana Dakshina Kailasavasa Abhishtadana Chaturakarancha Dina Karunanide Sunasharasudana Ajnana Karabashupate अभीष्टदान चतुरकराज दीनकरुणानिधे सोनशरसूदना अज्ञानहर पशुपते ज्ञान गुरुगुकसच्चिदानन्दमय मूर्ते हीन जाति किराटकेन पूजित कीर्ते ज्ञान गुरुगुकसच्चिदानन्दमय मूर्ते हीन जाति किराटकेन पूजित कीर्ते श्रीं कालहस्तीश श्रुतजना वनसमीराकारो मा पाहि राजमौळे
We have now arrived at the heart of our journey. Having reflected on the sacredness of Śrī Kālahasti, the symbolism of the Vāyu Liṅga, the significance of Prāṇa, the philosophy of Nāda, and the beauty of Hussaini, we now enter the composition itself. Dikshitar begins with a single invocation, Śrī Kālahastīśa. Sometimes a name is enough. In our tradition, the divine name is not merely a label. It is remembrance, invocation, and relationship. When Dikshitar utters Śrī Kālahastīśa, he is not introducing the deity. He is addressing the Lord with intimacy and devotion. He then sings Shrita Janavana, protector of those who seek refuge. Notice the word Shrita, one who has taken refuge. Refuge is more than devotion. It is complete trust. It reminds us of Bhagavan Krishna's assurance in the Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyah mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. Take refuge in me alone, I shall free you, do not grieve. Perhaps surrender is not a sign of weakness, but the discovery of where the heart truly belongs. The next phrase is uniquely beautiful. Samira Kara, the one whose very form is like the breeze. The breeze cannot be seen, yet its presence is unmistakable. We see leaves sway, lamps flicker, and clouds move, though the wind itself remains invisible. In the same way, the divine may not be perceived by the senses, yet its presence is experienced everywhere. With this single word, Dikshitar transforms the Vāyu Liṅga into a profound symbol of the unseen reality that pervades all existence. He then offers a simple prayer, Mam Pahi, protect me. Just 2 words. No elaborate requests, no list of worldly desires. Simply protect me. Perhaps that is the beauty of true prayer. Each seeker silently completes that sentence according to their own life. Protect me from fear, ignorance, pride, or restlessness. Vedānta does not diminish devotion, it deepens it. The Pallavi concludes with Rajamoule Ehi. O Lord, adorned with the crescent moon, come. If the Lord is all-pervading, why ask Him to come? Saint Thirunavukarasar, whom we lovingly know as Appar, answers this beautifully in the Thevaram. தேடி கண்டு கொண்டேன் திருமாலோட நான்முகனும் தேடி தேடோனா தேவனை என்னுள்ளே தேடி கண்டு கொண்டேன். I searched and found him, the very Lord whom even Vishnu and Brahma sought in vain. At last, I discovered him within my own heart. Perhaps Dikshitar's Ehi is not an invitation for the Lord to arrive, but a prayer for the mind to awaken to the presence that has always been within. The Anupallavi now expands this intimate prayer into a universal vision. Anila Akasha Bhumi Salila Agni Prakasha. O Lord, who shines as air, space, earth, water and fire. The Lord of the Sanctum is now revealed as the Lord of the entire cosmos. The 5 elements are not separate from him. They are the expressions of his presence. Here, devotion gently blossoms into Vedānta. Dikshitar then sings Pakari Vidihari Prāṇamaya Kosha. With remarkable brevity, he reminds us that even Indra, Brahma and Hari function through Prāṇa, echoing the teachings of the Taittiriya Upanishad. What the Upanishads teach through philosophy, Dikshitar expresses through music. That is the genius of this composition. He does not merely compose a kriti. He allows the wisdom of the Upanishads to sing. The Pallavi begins with a personal prayer, "Protect me." The Anupallavi reveals why that prayer is possible. The Lord we invoke is not confined to the sanctum of Śrī Kālahasti. He shines as the 5 elements, lives as Prāṇa, pervades the universe, and yet listens to the silent prayer of every seeker. And with that understanding, Dikshitar gently prepares us for the Charanam, where devotion flowers into the highest vision of Vedānta. Until this point, Dikshitar has led us through the glory of Śrī Kālahastīśa. In the Charanam, however, the journey becomes deeply inward. What begins as devotion gradually unfolds into the vision of Vedānta. The opening words are Jnana Prasunambika Pate. O Lord of Goddess Jnana Prasunambika. The Divine Mother here is not celebrated merely for beauty or power, but as the one who blossoms as Jnana, the true knowledge. In Vedānta, this is not intellectual learning, but the recognition of her real nature. As the Upanishads teach, there is knowledge of the world, and there is the higher knowledge by which the imperishable is known. Perhaps Dikshitar gently reminds us that every outer pilgrimage must ultimately become an inward one. He then addresses the Lord as Bhaktabhimana, the one who cherishes his devotees. This is a profoundly comforting expression. Before we begin loving the Lord, His grace has already embraced us. Shiva's nature is compassion, and his relationship with the devotee is founded not on fear but on boundless grace. Next comes Abhishta Dhana Chatura Karabja, the Lord whose lotus hands are ever ready to bestow blessings. Yet, the greatest blessing is not always the fulfillment of every desire. The Katha Upanishad reminds us that life presents us with two paths, the pleasant and the truly beneficial. Out of compassion, the Lord guides us not merely towards what we seek, but towards what helps us grow. Dikshitar then sings Dīna Karunanide, the treasure house of compassion for those who recognize their own limitations. Spiritual growth begins not with the feeling that we know everything, but with the humility to seek. It is often in that humility that grace quietly enters our lives. The composition now reaches its philosophical heart with the words Ajnanahara, the destroyer of ignorance. Notice what Dikshitar asks the Lord to remove. Not enemies, not suffering, but ignorance itself. According to Vedānta, ignorance is the root of all sorrow, for it makes us mistake the changing body and mind for our true self. The timeless prayer of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad echoes this longing. Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityurma Amritangamaya. Lead me from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, and from mortality to immortality. The next epithet, Pashupate, carries an equally profound meaning. While commonly translated as Lord of all beings, in Shaiva philosophy, the Pashu is the individual soul bound by ignorance and limitation. The Lord is Pashupati, the one who lovingly frees the bound soul from its bondage. Dikshitar then signs the composition with his mudra, Jnana Guru Guha. The true Guru does not merely provide answers, but awakens the knowledge that already lies within the heart. The philosophical summit arrives with Satchit Anandamaya Murti, existence, consciousness, the bliss. In these three words, Dikshitar identifies Shiva with the very Brahman revealed in the Upanishads. Here, devotion and Vedānta become one. Yet, after reaching this lofty vision, Dikshitar ends with a touching remembrance. Hīna Jati Kiratakena Pujita Kirte. The Lord who accepted the worship of the humble hunter Kannappa. Why conclude with Kannappa after speaking of Satchit Ananda? Perhaps because Dikshitar leaves us with one final lesson. Knowledge reaches its fulfillment only when it blossoms as devotion. One may study every scripture, but without humility, wisdom remains incomplete. Kannappa possessed neither scholarship nor ritual learning, yet his heart was filled with unwavering love for the Lord. And perhaps that is the enduring message of this immortal composition. The highest Vedānta is not separate from bhakti. When knowledge matures, it expresses itself as humility. When devotion deepens, it becomes wisdom. And when both unite, music itself becomes a pathway to the divine. As we conclude this musical pilgrimage, perhaps the greatest gift of Śrī Kālahastīśa is not merely its poetry, its melody, or even its philosophy. It is a quiet invitation it offers each one of us. An invitation to pause, to listen, and to turn inward. For the Lord, whom Dikshitar worships, is not confined to the sanctum of Śrī Kālahasti. He shines through the five elements, breathes as Prāṇa, resonates as Nāda, and quietly abides in every heart. Perhaps the true pilgrimage begins when we recognize that the journey from the temple to the self is not measured in miles but in awareness. May the compassion of Śrī Kālahastīśa the wisdom of Jnana Prasunambika, the unwavering devotion of Kannappa Nayanar, and the timeless music of Muthuswami Dikshitar continue to illuminate our own journey, from devotion to wisdom and from knowledge to self-discovery. As we return to our daily lives, may we carry with us not only the echoes of this immortal composition, but also the inspiration to live with greater humility, deeper devotion, and a heart that is ever open to the divine. Until we meet again in another episode of Ragatri, this is Jai Shri signing off.